You're listening to international investment advisor Doug Goldstein on the Goldstein on Gelt show, the financial show where we'll talk about how you can make the most of your money. With all the confusing financial chatter bombarding you each and every day, Goldstein on Gelt will give you the practical information you want and need about living a financially stable life. Here's your host, money maven Doug Goldstein.
Okay, we are back. We are talking with Jaime Tardy. Jaime Tardy has a website called The Eventual Millionaire, a podcast, and it's very interesting because ever since she was little, Jaime wanted to be a millionaire. Then she found herself in debt and turned it all around. So, Jaime, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Doug.
Listen, before we go into sort of the whole question of how to become a millionaire, because I bet you're an expert in that now, how did you end up just getting to this stage in your life?
Now, that's a great question and a long one, so I'll make it a little bit shorter.
You have 30 seconds.
I know, ready to go. I went to college thinking like, everybody else did, where I'd get a good job, and I did. I graduated college. I had a six-figure job right out of college, which was absolutely amazing, right? I was 22, thinking that I was on top of the world. I'd traveled around the U.S. From different places, as a project manager. And then I realized after a couple of years of working that, number one, I hated it. Number two, I somehow was in $70,000 in debt, even though I made tons of money. Yeah, it was pitiful. We weren't paying that much attention to our finances. So even though we made great money, it didn't matter. We weren't doing anything very well with it. So, unfortunately, it sort of came to that head where I was like, I need to quit my job, but I made most of the money. My husband's a performer, and so I was like, okay, how am I ever going to quit my job, and go with a less pay scale and stop traveling, because we wanted to have a family. So it was sort of that thing where we went, okay, we're buckling down, we're figuring out how to pay this stuff off. So, in January of 2006, we were like, okay, we sold a brand new car. It was 2 months old.
Wow.
Yeah. I wish I would have told myself 2 months before not to buy it, but, it's a $20,000 car. We ended up working really hard, taking on extra jobs. We paid it all off within 16 months, and it was funny.
$70,000 in 16 months?
Yes.
That's amazing.
Now, I made great money, and my husband took on a second job, and I worked. I know, see? People go, well, you made great money. I hear that a lot. I was living on $30,000, maybe, even, not even for between the two of us, and we had a really high mortgage payment and stuff, because it was hard. It was really, really hard. But it was all worth it, because while I was doing that, actually, I was pregnant, which is always a good thing. 7-month pregnant lady, working her butt off, trying to pay off this debt. So that way, when my son was 4 months old, I was able to quit my job, which was amazing. And that was, he's 4.5 now, so that was a while ago. So I'm a very, very lucky person.
All right, so you made it out of that, and then you came up with this idea about the eventual millionaire. What is an eventual millionaire?
Yeah, I like to say it's someone who, knows that they're going to be a millionaire eventually. With inflation and everything like that, we kind of all have to be in order to live okay in retirement. It's not about, being hugely rich, though I do interview quite a few people that are. It's really about setting yourself up for the future. And the problem, though, is that you want to be able to enjoy yourself now, too. I could have kept that job and worked a really lot and become a millionaire a lot faster, just because I made great money, but I would have not enjoyed a minute of it. And really, that was the most important thing. Now I only work part-time, so an eventual millionaire is really someone who is willing to do what they need to do to have an enjoyable life and take care of their finances at the same time.
Okay, so you spend a lot of time interviewing people who've already made it to be millionaires.
Exactly.
In
so
dollars, by the way, let's just be clear. We're talking dollars, not Japanese yen or Israeli shekels.
That would be, Japanese yen, that'd be much easier. I should move over there. Call myself a millionaire much easier. So it is one of those things where I started this blog, eventualmillionaire.com, and talked about sort of how I got out of debt. And I wanted to really talk about how I would become a millionaire, because I, got out of the debt. We were debt-free except our mortgage, and now we're working on our businesses. My husband's a performer, and I have my own business, and so we're really trying to move forward and grow our net worth. So one of the things that came, though, was I wanted to talk to people who actually were millionaires, because that's how I'm going to learn how they became a millionaire and do it myself.
So this was not people who inherited money, right?
No, these are all self-made millionaires.
Is
some of them came from...
Considered self-made?
Mm-hmm.
Marrying?
What was that?
if you marry money, does that make you self-made?
Yeah, good question, because it was their choice, right? That's hard work trying to find someone who'll marry you that's a millionaire, right?
No, it is. To stay married to someone who's like that. No.
Oh, yeah, no. I think my criteria is someone who has at least $1 million in net worth, whether their marriage or not, but it was usually built either in a business. I really specifically like to choose millionaire business owners because I really enjoy that. But I also have people from the stock market that have made it, and also through real estate. And I think it's really good to sort of have a smattering of everyone so I can see what their success techniques are, because that was what's really important to me, to really find out what are these people doing, that maybe I'm not, or maybe people that want to hear this information aren't doing too, to find out we need to do the things that millionaires do in order to become a millionaire, right? So I'm trying to really figure out what those are.
Okay, so we are talking to Jaime Tardy, who after finding herself $70,000 in debt and not so happy with her job, decided she wanted to change. Within 4 years, she had quit her job, paid off the debt, and now she's showing up on CNN, MSN, Kiplingers, even Yahoo's homepage. And she has this neat website where she interviews millionaires and talks to them about what they've done to become millionaires. So, Jaime, tell us, what is some of the top advice you've learned from your interviewees?
Well, at the end of every interview, I like to ask the same question, right? Because I love to hear the different answers that come across. And the question is, what's one action that listeners can take this week to get to their goal of $1 million? And it's really neat to sort of hear what people say. So what I ended up doing is I created a top 10 list, because some people would say the same thing over and over again. So some of the top 10 that was sort of really interesting is, one of them was stop negativity. And it was from Joy Gendusa. She has a very large company. I think it's a $19 million company now, called Postcard Mania. And she started out, she was a graphic designer before she had this huge company. But one of the things that she really needed to do was get rid of the negative people in her life. And she talked about how there were people that, looked like they supported you on the outside and then would, go, she's crazy behind your back or something like that. So she said she went through her Rolodex and was like, we don't even have Rolodexes nowadays, but she went through her Rolodex and really took out the people and made the hard choice of going, I can't hang out with them anymore. It's not as though they're not good people in their own right, but I can't be with them anymore because they affect me more than I want them to. Were these
social contacts or were these business contacts?
These are mostly social contacts. I mean, even she talked about friends, but in general, I think there were some business too. I mean, she already had a business as a graphic designer with, I think, one person, and then ended up trying to make this brand new business having to do with postcards. It's a really great story. I mean, I highly recommend anyone listen to any of the interviews, of course, because I think they're great. But she tells her whole story of how she does that. And I've had more than one millionaire talk about negativity and really getting the people out of your life that are really going to hold you back, because that's one of the things that we need to really do in order to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a good tip. What's the next tip? Now I'm getting it. I better write these down. Okay. No negativity.
I know. Well, and at the end, I'll tell you, there's a place where you can download the top 10 tips for free, so that way everybody can see. And there's there's actually a whole PDF on it. So it tells you the millionaire, it tells them what they said, and then it gives you a little actions to take with that. But in general, there's a lot. One of them is about action and failing small, because that's really, really important. You can't become a millionaire unless you take the actions. But of course, we're so scared of risk that, we don't want to risk everything, especially if we have families and stuff like that. So this is more than just one millionaire talk about failing small with, testing the waters a little. Do what you can to sort of figure out whether or not this is going to work without investing tons of money into it, without really going big until you know it works ahead of time. So some of the stuff we already know, I mean, technically, right? This is easy information that we should know, but are we really doing it? And I think that's what's really important. These millionaires are really doing that.
I'm not sure if people necessarily... That's a good point. A lot of times I've seen people set up a business and they feel that they not only have to put in their own money, but their family money, and then borrow, because if you don't invest a lot, you're not going to make anything, and then they wipe themselves out. Whereas and I think a lot of people believe that's the step they have to take, but the starting small does, in fact, sound wiser to me.
Well, and most of them are bootstrapped. Like, a lot of these people didn't get huge venture capital. I mean, that's usually what we hear when people starting businesses. Ooh, someone invested $1 million into my business, and that's how I became a millionaire. And most of them aren't. I mean, a lot of them are just small businesses that ended up growing and growing. I mean, there was one person named Richard Carey. He was a carpenter. You know, he had dyslexia, and he ended up moving forward and becoming a huge company that produces manufactured stone. And so it's like, you know, you can come from all walks of life and just sort of see an opportunity and go do it. So he started it small and really started building it out. So, and there's, I love this one because I talk about him all the time. There's a person named Craig Wolf, and he actually owns a company called Celebridux. And they're a company that makes rubber duckies that look like celebrities. And they're a multi-million-dollar company. And I'm going, really? Rubber duck celebrities? But people love him. And he talks about on his interview how he really did it. And it's just amazing to sort of hear, you know, and people looked at him like he was crazy when he was telling them, you know, I think his first one was like Betty Boop or something. And he tried to get the license agreement. And they were like, sure, you send us that when you're done, like thinking he's nuts, you know? And of course now he can sort of show everyone that apparently he is nuts, but he admits fully, but he has an amazing business and people absolutely love it. So fun stuff.
That's funny. You know, I'm thinking as you're describing that, I say, you know, I've seen this before. I remember looking at the website, and I think I even showed it to my kids and trying to think, where did I hear about this? And now, of course, I heard about it because I listened to the interview on The Eventual Millionaire. I'm putting it all together. We're talking with Jaime Tardy, who has this great concept of talking to millionaires to learn how to be a millionaire one day. She had quit her job when she was $70,000 in debt, bailed herself out, and now not only does this really cool interview, but she's developed a whole team of mentors of people who in fact are successful. I have to say, Jaime, one of the things that I hear as a financial advisor, my day job is that I'm a financial advisor, and I talk to people about personal financial issues. And very often people come into my office and they tell me, well, my friend said or my neighbor said, and they put a huge amount of weight in whatever their friend or neighbor said, even if this person has no concept about investing. But I really like your model, which is let me talk to people who've actually made it and see what I can learn from them. So that's the way to go.
Well, and what's so funny is that my suspicion of that's a good idea, right, has been confirmed by all these millionaires now. So I have, I'm putting together something that's called the Eventual Millionaire Academy, and it sort of really figures out what everybody says. So specifically talking about mentors, like how did they each get their own mentors? How did they know who to talk to? What did they do? Like Derek Sivers goes into a whole thing, he owns the company CD Baby, of how to get a mentor. And so people don't know that stuff, you know. Oh, I just emailed them. Well, what does the email say? And so he went through and talked about like what the email should, how long the email should be, what the email should say. But it's so important to have mentors or people that are in the business or close to the business that you're doing really with you, because they're the ones that are going to know what works and doesn't work. Like you said, you don't want to be taking business advice from someone that doesn't have a business, and you don't want to take business advice from friends and family that don't know or have failed businesses and that sort of thing. You want people that are really doing what you want. And so one of the big things that all of the people I've been interviewing have had is is mentors, and as they've gone up, right? So there was one I talked to, his name's Robert Smith, and he has a company called Champion Worldwide Media, and he's like, as I went and got older and made more money, I had to get new mentors. So now my mentors have huge net worths, like way more than just millions, because I'm looking to, you know, have 100 million or 200 million in net worth. It's not just about a couple million. So they're still doing the exact same thing. They're still finding people, because we're never at the top of our game. There's always someone that knows more than you. It's really important to know, you know, that there are people that will be willing to even give you information, and you don't even have to pay them half the time. You know, I always think that you have to, you know,
how much could you afford to pay them extra? You know, if they've got $100 million.
That's the thing. They're millionaires. Come on, like they really care about my money, right. You know. And so that's what I'm trying to, like, I have clients and students in the academy, and I'm really trying to let them know that too. I think it can be important to pay people, don't get me wrong. I mean, investing in yourself is huge. But when you don't have to, don't. If you can find someone that wants to do it for the love of doing it, so many of these people want to give back. Like, they feel so blessed with how much they've done. And so if you can find someone that's willing to invest time, and of course you have to help them too. It's not a one-way street. You can definitely help them. But that's really huge, and you can really form a relationship instead of just, well, I pay you and that's why you talk to me,
That sounds great. Okay, Jaime, I'm very sorry, but we're just about out of time. We've been talking to Jaime Tardy. In the last couple of seconds, tell us, how can people learn more about the work that you're doing?
Well, if you go to eventualmillionaireacademy.com, you can sign up and get the free top 10 tips, and you'll also get every week a new millionaire interview for at least the 10 weeks for those top 10 tips. So I highly recommend going there. It's just an email address, and you can get all that free information.
Okay, that sounds fabulous. Jaime Tardy, best of luck. I'm sure that we will be talking to you in the future, especially as you become closer and closer to becoming a millionaire yourself.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Doug.
Take care.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.